My name is Harper Carter, and 3 months ago I witnessed the ugliest truth about my family. We were at Atlanta International Airport, surrounded by the chaos of rolling suitcases and flight announcements. My millionaire grandfather, Richard Carter, had just spent $2 million on a luxury family trip to Europe, something he believed would finally bring his children and grandchildren together. He looked so proud, holding his ticket folder and smiling at all of us. But when we reached the counter, my father leaned in, his voice calm but cutting. "Dad, I forgot your ticket. Just go home." The words hit harder than any scream. I saw my grandfather's smile falter, his hand tremble on his suitcase handle. And in that instant, I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was planned. They never wanted him to come. That day, I made my choice. I stayed with him. Growing up, people thought my life was golden. My father, Michael Carter, strutted through town as if he owned every building. My mother Linda smiled at charity galas, and my Aunt Susan flaunted her designer purses on social media. But the truth was far less glamorous. Behind the glossy surface, there was only one person who ever truly cared for me, my grandfather, Richard Carter. He was the man who picked me up from school when my parents forgot. The man who sat through my piano recitals, clapping so loudly that I blushed. The man who, despite being a millionaire real estate mogul, never acted superior. His hands were rough from decades of work, his laugh deep and contagious. To me, he wasn't the Carter fortune. He was simply Grandpa. My father never saw it that way. To him, Richard was a walking wallet, a fountain that never ran dry. He tolerated his father only because of the money. I knew it. I saw it in the way he tightened his jaw when Grandpa gave me gifts, or the way he rolled his eyes when Grandpa told stories from his youth. My mother, Linda, was colder. "Richard spoils you," she often said, her voice clipped. "Don't rely on him so much, Harper. You'll regret it." Yet, whenever a new luxury car appeared in our driveway, she didn't seem to mind whose money it came from. And then there was Aunt Susan, always laughing too loudly, hugging Grandpa for show, before turning to whisper complaints about how he never invested enough in her husband Greg's brilliant business ventures. Their children, Chloe and Ethan, barely looked at him during family dinners, too absorbed in their phones to notice the old man at the table. But Grandpa never complained. He sat quietly, sipping his black coffee, his eyes lingering on each of them with a softness that broke my heart. He had built this empire from nothing: sleepless nights, risky deals, years of sacrifice. And yet the family he dreamed of uniting drifted further and further away. I remember one evening, sitting beside him on the porch of his Charleston estate. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in orange and violet. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "All I want, Harper," he said, his voice low, "is for this family to love each other the way I love them. Maybe one day, they'll see." I squeezed his hand, wishing I could promise him it would come true. But deep down, I already sensed the truth. My father and aunt would never see him as anything more than a bank account. I just didn't know how far they were willing to go until the trip that changed everything. It began so suddenly, I almost didn't recognize my own family. My father, Michael, who rarely called Grandpa except on birthdays, suddenly picked up the phone 3 times in 1 week. I overheard him in the kitchen, his voice dripping with sugar. "Dad, how are you feeling? Eating well? You know, I was just thinking we haven't spent enough time together as a family." I nearly choked on my coffee. Michael Carter didn't think about family. He thought about profits. Then came my Aunt Susan. She arrived at Grandpa's estate with a bright smile and a box of expensive chocolates. She kissed him on the cheek and laughed as if they were the closest of companions. "Dad, you've worked all your life. You deserve the world. Greg and I were just saying we should take a trip. A real trip. Paris, Rome, London, all of us together. Imagine it." Greg nodded eagerly. "You've always said family is everything, Richard. Let's make memories while we can." I watched Grandpa's face soften. He wanted so badly to believe them. His eyes lit up at the idea of finally having his children under one roof, or rather, one airplane cabin. When I asked him later that night if he truly wanted to go, he smiled faintly. "Of course, Harper. Don't you think it would be wonderful? Just once? To see them laughing together? I didn't want to ruin his dream, but unease prickled in my stomach. It was too sudden, too rehearsed. Still, I nodded and hugged him. If it makes you happy, Grandpa, then yes. In the weeks that followed, the act continued. My mother Linda, who usually treated Grandpa like an inconvenient shadow, called him every other day. Richard, have you been sleeping well? I saw a lovely scarf in the boutique downtown. I thought of you. She even mailed it over. A cashmere scarf, expensive and unnecessary. Grandpa folded it carefully and said, "Too nice to wear." Even my cousins Chloe and Ethan played along. Chloe posted on Instagram, "Can't wait for family trip to Europe, turn number family first." Ethan, usually silent, muttered one evening, "It'll be fun, Grandpa." But behind their words, I sensed a hollow echo. Their eyes didn't shine with love, they gleamed with calculation. Then one night, as I walked past my parents' room, I heard whispers. "Did he transfer it?" my mother asked. "Yes," my father answered, his voice low but triumphant. 2 million, straight from his investment account. My heart sank. $2 million. His hard-earned fortune, poured into their hands under the guise of family. I pressed my back against the wall, my pulse racing. This wasn't about togetherness, it was about greed. Still, I clung to one fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, they'd honor his dream and take him with us. Maybe all this scheming would still lead to a happy memory for him. I was wrong. The morning of our departure felt like a dream come true for Grandpa, at least. He arrived at our house in Charleston with his old leather suitcase, the one he'd carried since the 1970 seconds. His hands trembled slightly as he set it down, but his smile was wide. "Harper, can you believe it? Paris. I'll finally see the Eiffel Tower." I hugged him tightly. "Of course, Grandpa, and I'll be right next to you." We drove to Atlanta International Airport in 2 SUVs, loaded with luggage. My father Michael was in unusually high spirits, laughing with Susan about wine in Italy. Linda tapped away on her phone, already posting a picture captioned, "Family adventure begins." Grandpa sat quietly beside me in the back seat. His fingers tapped against his suitcase handle. I noticed the way he kept glancing at my father in the driver's seat, almost as if trying to believe this was real. When we reached the terminal, the place was buzzing, families hugging goodbye, rolling suitcases echoing against the floor, the scent of coffee mingling with perfume. My cousins Chloe and Ethan didn't look up from their phones as we joined the line at check-in. I held Grandpa's arm. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." But it wasn't. The agent scanned our passports one by one. My father, my mother, Susan, Greg, the cousins. Then she frowned, typing again. "I don't see a reservation for Richard Carter." I froze. "What? That can't be right. Try again." She shook her head. "No booking under that name." Grandpa blinked, confused. "There must be a mistake." My son handled the arrangements. Michael stepped forward, his expression tight. "It's a system error. Don't worry about it." But I saw the flicker in his eyes. He wasn't surprised. Grandpa turned to him, his voice trembling. "Michael, did you never book me a ticket?" Silence stretched between them. My mother Linda stepped in, her tone falsely soothing. "Dad, traveling so far isn't good for your health. It's better you stay home. We'll bring you something nice from Europe." The words sliced through the air. My grandfather's smile vanished, replaced by a hollow stare. He clutched his suitcase handle like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I snapped. "What are you saying? He paid for everything. $2 million. How could you leave him behind?" People in line turned to look. Chloe rolled her eyes and muttered, "So embarrassing." Susan whispered sharply, "Harper, lower your voice." But I couldn't. My blood was boiling. "Embarrassing? What's embarrassing is abandoning your own father after taking his money." Michael's voice hardened. "Enough, Harper. Don't be dramatic. Dad will stay here. We'll go." I grabbed Grandpa's hand. "No. If he's not going, I'm not either." My father's face turned red. "Then you'll regret it. Don't expect me to support you when you come crawling back." Susan added mockingly, "Don't ruin this for everyone. You're just a child throwing a tantrum." I looked around at my mother's cold eyes. at Susan's smirk, at my cousins glued to their screens. Then I looked at Grandpa. His shoulders were shaking, but he wasn't crying. He was too proud for that. He just whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong." That broke me. I wrapped my arms around him. "No, Grandpa, you belong with me. If they don't see your worth, then they don't deserve you." Behind us, the agent cleared her throat. "Next, please." Michael snapped his suitcase closed, glared at us one last time, and marched toward the gate. Linda followed without a word. Susan grabbed her children and strutted away, Greg trailing behind. Not one of them looked back. And just like that, they were gone. Grandpa and I stood in the middle of the terminal, the crowd swirling around us. His suitcase sat at his feet, untouched. He stared at the boarding gate as if watching his whole life walk away. I leaned close, whispering through the lump in my throat. "You're not alone. Not anymore." He finally turned to me, his eyes glistening. "Harper, thank you." We walked out of the terminal together, leaving behind the people who had chosen greed over family. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The ride back from the airport felt longer than the 3-hour drive it really was. The city lights faded into the night, then into the lonely stretch of highway. But inside the taxi, all I could hear was Grandpa's shallow breathing. He sat beside me, his old leather suitcase balanced on his knees. His hands rested on top of it, knuckles white. He hadn't spoken a single word since we left the terminal. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to say something, anything. Instead, I just held his arm, afraid he would crumble if I let go. Halfway down the highway, he finally spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "Maybe I don't belong anymore, Harper. Maybe I'm just outdated." The words stabbed through me. "No," I said fiercely. "They don't deserve you. You've given them everything, and they threw it away. But I won't. I'm here." He gave me a faint smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes, and turned back toward the window. The reflection of neon signs slid across the glass, painting his face in fractured colors like a man already fading from his own family portrait. When we arrived at his Charleston estate, the gates creaked open, revealing the mansion he had built decades ago. Marble pillars, wide gardens, a fountain in the front yard. Every stone was a testament to his success. And yet, when we stepped inside, it felt hollow. The chandeliers glittered, the paintings lined the walls, but the silence was unbearable. Grandpa set his suitcase down in the grand foyer, the sound echoing through the empty halls. He looked around slowly, his shoulders slumping under the weight of memories. "I built all of this for them," he murmured. "And tonight, I realized, it means nothing." I swallowed hard, fighting tears. "It still means something to me, Grandpa. You mean everything to me." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his study and sank into the leather armchair by the fireplace. He pulled out a faded family photo, my father, my aunt, himself, and me as a child, and traced his finger over the faces. The firelight flickered, but it couldn't warm the room. It couldn't warm him. That night, I promised myself I would not let them get away with this. They thought they could steal his money, break his heart, and walk away untouched. They were wrong. The next morning, I woke before the Sunday. The mansion was silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I padded downstairs to the study, where I found Grandpa asleep in the armchair, still holding the old family photo. His face looked years older than it had the night before. I clenched my fists. I couldn't let him fade away like this, not after everything he had sacrificed. I went straight to his office desk and began searching. Within minutes, I found it. A folder labeled Travel Itinerary. Inside was a wire transfer receipt. $2 million moved from Richard Carter's investment account to my father, Michael's personal account. My stomach twisted. Proof. Later that day, I visited the travel agency downtown Charleston. The manager, a woman named Holly Sanders, remembered my family. Her brows knit as she pulled up the records. "Yes, Mr. Carter paid for a private package. $2 million, first-class accommodations, luxury hotels, the works." She scrolled further, then frowned. "But look here, the traveler list. His name isn't on it. It looks like it was removed before final confirmation." My chest tightened. So they planned this. From the beginning, Holly's voice softened. I'm so sorry, Harper. If you need a written statement, I'll provide one. That evening, I returned to the mansion, papers clutched in my hands. Grandpa sat at the dining table, stirring cold coffee. I laid the documents down in front of him. They took everything, Grandpa, and they never even intended to bring you along. His eyes scanned the papers slowly. His hands shook. Michael, my own son. I grabbed his hand. We're not going to let them get away with this. I found something, an agency that helps protect seniors from abuse. It's called Adult Protective Services. I want to call them. He shook his head immediately. No. They're my children, Harper. I don't want to destroy them. They destroyed themselves, I shot back. You gave them everything, and they abandoned you like trash. This isn't love, it's exploitation. If we stay silent, they'll think it's acceptable. They'll keep doing it. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then his eyes lifted to mine. There was pain in them, but also something else, pride. If you believe it's right, Harper, he said slowly, then I trust you. The next morning, I dialed the number with trembling fingers. My call was answered by a man named Daniel Hayes, a caseworker. I poured out the entire story, the trip, the money, the airport betrayal. Daniel listened carefully, asking sharp questions. Do you have proof of the transfer? Any witnesses at the airport? When I told him about the receipt and Holly's willingness to testify, his tone hardened. You have enough to open an investigation. Harper, I need you and your grandfather to come into our office. We'll take it from there. As I hung up, my heart raced, fear mixed with relief. For the first time since the airport, I felt hope. My family thought they could bury us in silence, but I was ready to dig up the truth and make them face it. 3 weeks crawled by like years. Grandpa and I stayed in Charleston, waiting in silence while APS prepared their case. He tried to keep busy watering the garden, dusting old photo frames, but I saw it in his eyes. The wound was still raw. Then, one morning, Daniel Hayes called. They're scheduled to land tomorrow evening at Atlanta International. I'll be there with the summons. Harper, are you ready? I swallowed hard. Yes, more ready than they are. The next day, the arrivals terminal overflowed with laughter and chatter. Travelers wheeled glossy suitcases plastered with European stickers. I stood near the gate, my heart pounding, Grandpa's hand gripping mine. Beside us, Daniel Hayes adjusted his suit jacket, a stack of official documents tucked under his arm. Then I saw them. My father Michael in a tailored coat, sunglasses perched arrogantly on his face. My mother Linda trailing behind, scrolling through her phone. Aunt Susan wore a silk scarf, her arm looped through Greg's. Chloe and Ethan dragged shopping bags, bragging loudly about Paris boutiques. They looked like they had stepped out of a luxury commercial, carefree, glowing, untouched, until they saw us. Grandpa straightened his back. His frail frame looked taller, stronger, as if the weight of betrayal no longer bent him. Dad? Michael's smile faltered. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, Daniel stepped forward, voice calm but razor sharp. Mr. Michael Carter, Mrs. Linda Carter, Mrs. Susan Miller, Mr. Greg Miller, you've been served. Summons regarding allegations of financial abuse against Mr. Richard Carter. He handed each of them a paper. Linda's face went pale. What is this? Some kind of joke? Susan clutched her purse. Financial abuse? He gave us the money. Daniel didn't flinch. We'll let the court decide. You are required to appear. The terminal fell silent around us, curious travelers slowing down to watch. My father's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Dad, tell them this isn't true. Tell them you wanted us to go. Grandpa's voice shook, but it carried across the hall. I wanted us to go together, not for you to abandon me. I stepped forward, my blood boiling. It wasn't Grandpa who called APS. It was me. Their heads snapped toward me. Michael's face turned crimson. You? You dare turn against your own parents? Yes, I spat. Because you stopped being parents the moment you betrayed him. You stole his money, his trust, and his dignity. I won't let you get away with it. Susan sneered. You foolish girl. Do you realize what you've done? You've destroyed this family. No, I said coldly. You destroyed it the moment you left him behind. For a moment no one spoke. Chloe finally muttered, This is so stupid. While Ethan tugged on his headphones, pretending not to care. Greg cursed under his breath. Linda's eyes darted nervously around the crowd. And my father, Michael Carter, the man who had always towered over me, looked small for the first time in my life. Daniel closed his folder. "We'll see you in court." As they shuffled away, muttering threats and excuses, I tightened my grip on Grandpa's hand. He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes, and whispered, "Harper, you gave me back my voice." I shook my head, holding him tighter. "No, Grandpa. I just made sure the world heard it." The courthouse in Charleston wasn't grand like the marble halls of D.C., but the moment I stepped inside, my chest tightened as though I were walking into a battlefield. Wooden benches, polished floors, the seal of justice hanging above the judge's chair, it all felt suffocating. Grandpa stayed home that day. He couldn't bear to face them, and honestly, I didn't want him to. It was my turn to stand for him. Daniel Hayes sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, calm and steady. Across the aisle, my father Michael, my mother Linda, Aunt Susan, and Uncle Greg sat stiffly with their attorney, a slick man in a gray suit who adjusted his tie every 5 seconds. Susan glared at me like I was poison. Michael's eyes burned with fury. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, banged her gavel. "Court is now in session." Daniel rose first. "Your Honor, this case is about exploitation. Richard Carter, a 78-year-old man, transferred $2 million to his son and daughter under the promise of a family trip abroad. Yet when the day came, he was left at the airport, intentionally excluded. This is financial abuse of an elder." Their attorney leapt up. "Objection. There is no abuse here. Mr. Carter voluntarily gifted the funds. My clients are guilty of nothing more than generosity." The judge nodded slowly. "Proceed with your evidence, Mr. Hayes." Daniel clicked the projector. The receipt of the wire transfer flashed on the screen. $2 million from Richard Carter's account to Michael Carter. Then the travel itinerary, every family member listed except Grandpa. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. I was called to the stand. My hands trembled as I swore the oath. Then I sat down, facing the cold stares of my own family. "Miss Carter," Daniel said gently, "can you tell the court what happened at the airport?" I took a deep breath. We were all lined up at check-in. When it was my grandfather's turn, the agent said there was no ticket under his name. My father looked at him and said, "Dad, I forgot your ticket. Just go home." Gasps erupted from the gallery. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. He had paid for everything. He believed this was his chance to finally unite the family. But they never intended to take him. They humiliated him, abandoned him. I couldn't let it go. Michael's lawyer shot up. "Your Honor, this is hearsay." Daniel raised a hand. "Not hearsay. We have corroboration." The doors opened, and in walked Holly Sanders, the travel agent. She testified calmly. Richard Carter's name was removed from the booking before confirmation. I offered a statement weeks ago. Then came an airport staffer, who confirmed overhearing my father's words. By now, the jury's faces had hardened. Finally, my father demanded to speak. He stood, fists clenched. "This is absurd. My father is old. He wouldn't have survived a trip across Europe. We spared him. We did it for his own good." I shot to my feet, unable to stay silent. "For his good? You call robbing him of $2 million and shattering his dignity a kindness? No, you did it for yourselves. For shopping bags and luxury hotels. Don't pretend otherwise." The judge banged the gavel. "Order!" Michael's face twisted. "You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you?" I cut him off, my voice breaking. "You've done nothing for me. He raised me. He loved me. And you betrayed him." Silence swallowed the room. The judge leaned forward, eyes like steel. "I have heard enough." She turned to the jury. "Do you find sufficient evidence of financial abuse against Mr. Richard Carter?" The foreman stood. "We do." My breath caught. The judge's voice rang out, clear and merciless. "This court orders Michael Carter, Linda Carter, Susan Miller, and Greg Miller to repay the full amount of $2 million to Richard Carter. Furthermore, due to their conduct, they are stripped of all inheritance rights and future guardianship over Mr. Carter." This ruling will remain in their permanent records. A stunned silence. Then Susan burst into tears, mascara streaking her cheeks. Greg cursed under his breath. Linda kept her head bowed. Shame, or maybe just fear of humiliation. My father roared, slamming his fist on the table. This is an outrage. We're his family. The judge's gavel cracked down. Exactly, and that makes your betrayal all the more reprehensible. I felt my knees go weak. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't of defeat, they were relief. Justice had been served. As I left the courtroom, Daniel squeezed my shoulder. You did well, Harper. Not many have the courage to face their own blood like that. Outside, the evening sun poured over Charleston. I pulled out my phone, ready to call Grandpa. My voice trembled as I whispered to the wind. It's over, Grandpa. They can't hurt you anymore. And for the first time since the airport, I felt like we had won. When I returned home from the courthouse, Grandpa was waiting on the porch of his Charleston estate. He rose slowly from his chair when he saw me, his eyes searching mine. I didn't even have to say the words he knew. They can't hurt you anymore, I whispered, wrapping my arms around him. He held me tight, his shoulders trembling. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lifting from him. Not entirely gone, but lighter. The following days were quiet. We didn't talk much about the trial. Instead, we started talking about the future. One morning, as we sat in his study, Grandpa looked up from his coffee and said, Harper, I don't want the rest of my life to be about betrayal. I want to give meaning to what's left. That's when the idea was born. Together, we created the Richard Carter Foundation, a trust dedicated to protecting seniors from financial abuse. Every dollar recovered from the lawsuit went into that fund. The first time we visited a small community center to deliver a grant, Grandpa's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since before the airport. He spoke to the elderly there, shook their hands, told them they weren't forgotten. I stood beside him, my heart swelling with pride. At night, I often caught him studying me. You saved me, Harper, he'd say softly. And I would answer the same way every time. No, Grandpa, you saved me. You showed me what family really means. Months passed. The house, once heavy with silence, began to echo with life again. Not because of the chandeliers or marble halls, but because of the laughter we created together, the purpose we built. Sometimes I still think about my parents and Aunt Susan. Their absence is a scar, but not a wound anymore. They chose greed. I chose love. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. Family isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty and love. Grandpa believed that until his last breath. And now, it's the legacy I carry forward, his gift, his lesson, his truth.